Welcome back, and this is episode 3. And last time I finished a video with the idea of trying to figure out what you want in your life or what you want your life to look like, and I thought that would be an interesting topic. And then now, after thinking about that a bit more, I think a more interesting way of looking at it is the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. Now, I think this plays a major part in trying to figure out what we want and how we want our life to look and what direction to head in. I think a lot of us, especially those who grew up in minority families, kind of viewed, or at least was instilled in us, a version of success. It's getting the big stable job in a big company with, longevity. There's enough people in this company that means that you can probably stay there for a while and it'll be okay. And say this job has a good paycheck and is quote unquote stable, and you can stay in this job for 20, 30, 40 years and then you retire. When it comes to life and relationships, it's getting married, having kids, buying a house, and all of those things are perfectly fine to want as long as you want them. And I think back to, I suppose, my career in architecture. Now, I don't necessarily regret getting into architecture. I think there were probably other paths I could have gone down, but I enjoyed, I suppose, my career so far. Definitely enjoyed uni. I enjoyed architecture school. Every architect will know architecture school is fun. But I remember specifically a conversation I had when I was really young. I mean, I couldn't have been, 10, 11, maybe 12 years old. And was in a car with my parents, and I don't know how we got on the conversation of what do you want to be when you're older. And I remember I specifically said artist. Now, when I was a kid, you couldn't get me to stop creating things. I drew, I painted, I baked, I did woodworking, I did sculpting. I think I dabbled in paper mache models for a while. I think that was fun. But yeah, I said artist. And instead of saying no or you can't do that, they said, oh, so you want to be poor. And that really stuck with me, because I never really considered it, at least at the time, how money will play a factor in my life. I just looked at, I'm going to do the things I enjoy, because why would I do anything else? That sounds ridiculous. And so I thought, in my infinite wisdom as a child, I thought, okay, how do I marry being creative with having a professional sounding impressive career? And architecture came to mind, and that was reinforced really quickly by anybody I told is I want to be an architect. They're like, wow, that's really impressive. Oh, that's really difficult. I heard it takes 7 years to do that, but it's okay because you'll be like making the big bucks afterwards. So I went down this path with as much external validation as possible. And every architect will know when they tell somebody they're an architect, it's always like, wow, that's so impressive. You must be like loaded, incredible. Well done, you worked really hard. And yes, I did. I worked damn hard. But now, I suppose 10 years into this education and career path, I can see now upon reflection, I probably should have experimented more. Though, like I said, I enjoy architecture and I think it's great. I do think there were other avenues. For example, in college, I did product design and I designed like a music brand. I made like a speaker into a snapback, which was cool. I made like iPhone cases to support this brand and like a website and all sorts of things. And I thought that was really fun. On the flip side, that was graphic design. In product design, I designed like a facade sign system that would stick outside of a building and I suppose bring life to our current art and design building at college. And that was also really fun. And I remember my college teacher telling me, oh, you'll be a good product designer. And I was like, no, I've already decided that I'm going to be an architect. Architect's the obvious path to go. Look, everyone thinks it's so impressive. Obviously, I said this mentally. And now looking back, maybe I should have explored product design a bit more before, committing for this long. Or I should have, just found other avenues, other things to experiment with. Just been, I suppose, less decisive. And that's something else that we kind of teach kids in this society is by the time you're 18, you should know what you want to do, or you should know what you want out of life. And then you should go on this path. Now, people who pick medicine, things like dentistry, or you go down the lawyer route, these are large commitments, architecture included. These are very large commitments and will take massive swaths of your life. And it's not to say that you can't do these things and change later. But I think there's good advice to say, experiment a bit more, look around to see if you really want to follow this path before committing. I think then once you do commit, you can be absolutely sure this is where you want to go. And I think that's kind of important and maybe left out of the conversation a little bit. And this kind of leads on to the next point for intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which is knowing what you want and knowing how to know what you want. I suppose, yeah, in recent years, not necessarily the last year, but maybe a few years before that, it really felt like I was being dragged through life or somewhat being along for the ride. When you have people around you that I suppose definitely know what they want, or at least present as they definitely know what they want, whereas you're not quite sure, you kind of feel obligated to help them. Like, well, they have such clear vision and I'm somewhat unsure. It's unfair for them to wait for me. I should be doing as much as possible to please them and help them on their goals and make them happy. And then along the way, I can figure out what I want to do. And upon reflection, I don't think that's a good idea. I think, one, I don't think being lost is necessarily bad anymore, anyway. I think when you accept that you don't know where you want to go exactly, or you haven't got your life exactly mapped out, I think that's good, because then it allows you to test a few things and then see how you feel about them, as opposed to rushing to try and figure out the answer. But yeah, when you're in a place where you really, I suppose, yeah, feel lost, or you really need to figure out what your next path is. Let's say if this takes up the majority of your mental space, you can't ignore it. I was in a place where I thought I could ignore it. I could leave it for now and then revisit it later, or it was partly too late for me to kind of dig deep into this part of my psyche and discover an answer. No, it's too late. I have to revisit this later, and I have to stay in this stable job, in quote unquote stable, while I focus on somebody else's dreams. And now, yeah, looking back, yeah, that was the wrong way to look at it. I think they could have been a middle ground, and that's important in kind of knowing what you want. Is pay attention to how you feel, because that little voice in the back of your head that says you need to try this, or you have this idea that's kind of ringing around in there, or you want to go and explore this part of your life, or say a hobby that you haven't tried before, or that you might think is embarrassing, or for example making YouTube videos. If you think that, oh, there's time in the future, or try it later, or it's too late for you to experiment with new hobbies, interests in life, that voice is only going to get louder. And the only thing you're going to find at quote unquote when you're ready, or when it's a convenient time, fun fact, there is never a convenient time, but the only thing you're going to find there is you wish you would have had done it sooner. So I think it's really important to kind of pay attention to the things you want to try, or at least the feeling of not knowing, and then delve into the unknown so you can find out what you can discover. I think that's equally as important. And lastly, and I think this is a really important one for figuring out what you want, is knowing the difference between what you want and what you think you should want. And this ties in perfectly with the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We're all told the things that we think we want. Stable career, house, kids, etc. Because those are the things I suppose the older generations had really easily, and they simply want the best for us. So when, for example, your parents or somebody further along in their career talks about their experiences, they think it's a complete comparison. It's, oh, I'm older than you and this is what I went through, so your experience is simply me, not as far along, and here's all the mistakes and things I wish I'd done, and they will be perfectly applicable to you. That's not true. There's only one you, there's only one life. What you want, even if you're on a similar path to the person giving you advice, you will think about it slightly differently, you will look at it slightly differently. And just because they have said this is what they wish they have done doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And I guess this goes back to that, the feeling of unknown. Just because you don't know necessarily where exactly you're going, lean into it. You don't need to find the quote unquote correct answer. You just need to find your answer and knowing what feels right. And this might mean, yeah, you take a step back to consider and maybe journal, or maybe talk to multiple people, or talk to people in completely different places, on completely different career paths, or in completely different stages of life. Maybe somebody's a solo traveler and that's what they decided to do as opposed to settle down. Or maybe somebody invested in property as opposed to saved up and bought one house, and that is an option of acquiring a property. Yeah, look at all the options, explore the options, Google, listen to podcasts, read books. I listen to audiobooks. I'm dyslexic out here. I'm not sitting down reading a whole book, but find information, like explore and see what you discover, because you don't know what you don't know. And knowing more things and experiencing more parts of what's possible can only expand what you will intrinsically want, and you'll find it. And I think that's important to know when you, I suppose, delve into the unknown of trying to figure out what you want, is that you will find an answer. The human mind doesn't like the unknown necessarily. We have to overcome the discomfort in the unknown so we can discover our answer for ourselves. Because, like all the organs in your body, the human brain wants efficiency. It doesn't like uncomfortable emotions because it's uncomfortable. But I like eating cake. I know I can't eat cake every day. Most days I know I can't eat cake every day. But I overcome the urge to do so because I know long term will be better. And I think that's the same feeling, or that's the same for the feeling of discomfort. It's uncomfortable now, but you have to overcome it so you can see what's on the other side of that discomfort. And that's how you grow. At least that's how I found I've grown. So yeah, know the difference between knowing what you want and knowing what you think you should want. And lastly, and this one is this one's a big lesson in patience. But once you've figured out what you want, or at least what you might want to try out, you have to get comfortable with the process as opposed to waiting for the outcome. In switching career paths, this might mean applying for a new job, and you think that your happiness and joy will come when you get the new job versus the opportunity that you have while applying for jobs, because you don't know when you're going to get it. Ultimately, all you can do is apply and write the best CV and cover letters you can and network and talk to people. But ultimately, you don't know when you're going to get this job. All you know is that you want it and you think it's worth it, and therefore you will try. And we need to be able to take lessons from that effort of trying. For example, if you are writing a new CV, maybe in this season of your life, and however long it lasts, you are going to work on writing the best CV possible, and that means rewriting it and doing more iterations and tweaking it and maybe asking for advice or sending to a friend and then revisiting it again. And that's the lesson that you'll learn, and you'll take joy in knowing that, oh, I can craft a really good CV when I need to. It's the same with networking. Sure, you are going out to events and you are meeting people with the intent of ideally finding a new role, but maybe the lesson you learn is speaking to people and speaking in different settings and to different types of people and being more open and engaging and working on your public speaking skills. Or if you struggle with social anxiety, which this is a chance for you to perhaps overcome or improve your relationship with that anxiety. There's always lessons to learn in this. Starting a YouTube channel, for example, the lesson could be, or at least the goal could be, you want a certain number of subscribers and viewers. But the lesson is, how do I upload consistently and enjoy the process of making, editing and uploading, and that becoming part of your day? Because at the end of the day, you don't know when subscribers are going to come. You don't know how many people are going to view these videos. But you do know is that if this is something you want to do, i.e. be a YouTuber, you will have to film, edit and upload videos consistently for a long period of time. And even when you're successful, you then have to do it even more. So you need to get comfortable with doing so, and finding the joy and the gratitude in that process. And then the last thing is what I've now come to see as my definition of patience. What I previously thought patience was how long you're willing to wait for something. And now I can define it as deciding what I think is worth waiting for and not putting a time limit on getting it. Yeah, I think if you have decided, for example, if you wanted to start a business, let's say hypothetically, you have decided you want to start a business and you wanted to make this amount of money, and you've given yourself, quote unquote, a 3-year deadline. Let's say in 3 years you didn't make that amount of money. Would you want to feel disappointed? Would you want to feel like it's a waste of time? Or would you want to feel grateful that you had put in the work to get this far, and that will motivate you to keep going? Because you're right, it may not take 3 years, but it might take 4 years. And if it took 4 years, but you quit at 3 years because you, quote unquote, gave yourself a deadline of 3 years, would you feel good about that? Would it be worth it? Or would you wish you have kept going if you had seen the foresight of knowing that it would have been possible in 4 years? And yeah, that's how I kind of define patience, of deciding what I want, knowing it's worth it, and then working towards it. And if I'm doing the actions, having the patience to know that at some point it will be successful. The last point is finding the daily actions. So whatever you want, whatever you whether it's finding a new role or starting a new business or a YouTube channel. Find the daily actions and decide what they are for you. And it doesn't mean, because I know you go online and you'll see all these productivity tips about how to fill every inch and every second of your calendar and how to make sure you're the most productive person. Did you know that you can get a year's worth of work done in a week? Fun fact, you can't. But deciding for yourself, how do you integrate the work that's required to build whatever you want, or to improve your career, or to find a relationship, etc.? How do you incorporate that into your day, and what are those actions? And as long as you're doing it, or even working out is a great example. Nothing happens overnight, especially working out and trying to get in shape or to get healthy. Nothing happens overnight, and you could be going to the gym 5 days a week for 3 months and eating chicken and broccoli, and you will see a difference if you did that. But is that sustainable? Is that a way you want to live life? If it does require you to go to the gym 5 days a week and eat chicken and broccoli only, and in 6 months or 3 months you get abs, can you do that forever to maintain the abs? Because that's what your body is used to now. It's not used to you now and again eating pizza or now and again eating cake. If you've been strictly eating chicken and broccoli for the past 3 months, that's what your body has decided is required for you to have abs. Versus you find a balanced diet, which is what everyone says, and then you work out 4 days a week, and maybe it takes you 6 months, 8 months, a year, but that balanced diet is something you're used to and you can continue doing, and that 4 days a week works with your schedule and you can continue doing. Now maintenance becomes easy. You don't need to change your lifestyle. You already did, and now you're used to it. And that's what I mean by finding the daily actions that are sustainable and that you can fit into your life. Yeah, I think ultimately intrinsic motivation is so simple and so easy to understand, but sometimes one of the hardest things to grasp and sometimes accept when you lose it, because the world is busy and we're constantly bombarded with different content and media and advertisement. It's almost like the world is designed to fool you into thinking that extrinsic motivation is the only kind of motivation. It really isn't. Now, this might also mean that your life looks different to your friends, and that's okay. It might also mean that you won't necessarily get, I don't want to say the fun days out, because I don't want to make it seem like going down this path means a miserable life. But yeah, it's just going to be a bit different, and you need to get comfortable with that. Everything I'm telling this camera is things I'm telling to myself. I need to get comfortable with that. And again, you may not know how long it takes, but I think it's worth it when you get to the end. Because how I see it is that if, let's say in 5 years, all the things I want, I didn't try, or I put off for later, or all I'm going to be left with 5 years is the risks and regrets about things I didn't do or didn't try. Versus if I found a way to sustainably integrate them into my life. Sure, maybe if I'm working on multiple things or I'm trying to do multiple things at once, maybe they're not all going to be as advanced or progressed as I hope they will be, but they will have progressed. I would have made momentum in those aspects versus not making momentum. And I think that's always a better way to look at it. And also, the things you want will change. I don't expect to want the same things in 10 years as I do now. At least I certainly hope not. So yeah, provide space for that to happen. I think that's okay, as long as everything you're working towards is the way you want it. And this doesn't mean compromise, or like I said earlier, it sometimes in life, especially when you have priorities or families involved, you do have to change your priorities depending on what season of life everybody else around you is in. But that doesn't mean putting it off. I feel like your body kind of catches up. It kind of rebels in in funny ways, because your mind knows that you would rather be focusing at least partly on something else, but instead you're not. You think you've intellectually convinced yourself that it's okay to wait, but in reality your mind knows you're lying to yourself. I think that's the biggest lesson you learn as you get older, is everybody's full of shit, including you, and the person who lies to you the most is most likely yourself. And it's okay when you recognize that, and we're all human, we all do it. We ain't that special. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, getting older. But yeah, I hope this was a good conversation, or at least a good video about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. This is a late one. Yeah, it's 11:15. Just came back from London. But I said I was going to film this video on a Sunday and then edit it over the next 2 days, if it takes 2 days. And that's what I'm going to do. So I hope it helps. I hope this was useful. Let's see what the next subject's going to be. We'll find out. But until then, Don't worry, probably be okay. Until next time, take it easy.